I spent the whole of that evening and the following day in a sort of gloomy stupor. I remember that I made an effort to work, and took up Kaidánoff. But in vain did the large printed lines and pages of the famous textbook flit before my eyes. 10 times in succession I read the words, "Julius Cæsar was distinguished for military daring," without understanding a word, and I flung aside my book. Before dinner I pomaded my hair again, and again donned my frock-coat and neckerchief. "What's that for?" inquired my mother. "Thou art not a student yet, and God knows whether thou wilt pass thy examination. And thy round jacket was made not very long ago. Thou must not discard it. There are to be guests," I whispered, almost in despair. "What nonsense! What sort of guests are they?" I was compelled to submit. I exchanged my coat for my round jacket, but did not remove my neckerchief. The princess and her daughter made their appearance half an hour before dinner. The old woman had thrown a yellow shawl over her green gown, with which I was familiar, and had donned an old-fashioned mob cap with ribbons of a fiery hue. She immediately began to talk about her notes of hand, to sigh and to bewail her poverty, and to importune, but did not stand in the least upon ceremony, and she took snuff noisily and fidgeted and wriggled in her chair as before. It never seemed to enter her head that she was a princess. On the other hand, Zinaida bore herself very stiffly, almost haughtily, like a real young princess. Cold impassivity and dignity had made their appearance on her countenance, and I did not recognize her looks or her smile. Although in this new aspect she seemed to me very beautiful. She wore a thin barège gown with pale blue figures. Her hair fell in long curls along her cheeks, in the English fashion. This coiffure suited the cold expression of her face. My father sat beside her during dinner, and with the exquisite and imperturbable courtesy which was characteristic of him, showed attention to his neighbor. He glanced at her from time to time, and she glanced at him now and then, but in such a strange, almost hostile, manner. Their conversation proceeded in French. I remember that I was surprised at the purity of Zinaida's accent. The old princess, as before, did not restrain herself in the slightest degree during dinner, but ate a great deal and praised the food. My mother evidently found her wearisome, and answered her with a sort of sad indifference. My father contracted his brows in a slight frown from time to time. My mother did not like Zinaida either. "She's a haughty young sprig," she said the next day, "and when one comes to think of it, what is there for her to be proud of? Avec sa mine de grisette." "Evidently, thou hast not seen any grisettes," my father remarked to her. "Of course I haven't, God be thanked. Only, how art thou capable of judging of them?" Zinaida paid absolutely no attention whatever to me. Soon after dinner the old princess began to take her leave. "I shall rely upon your protection, Maria Nikolaevna and Pyotr Vasilich," she said, in a sing-song tone, to my father and mother. "What is to be done? I have seen prosperous days, but they are gone. Here are my radiants," she added, with an unpleasant laugh. "But what's the good of an honor when you've nothing to eat?" My father bowed respectfully to her and escorted her to the door of the anteroom. I was standing there in my round jacket, and staring at the floor, as though condemned to death. Zinaida's behavior toward me had definitively annihilated me. What, then, was my amazement when, as she passed me, she whispered to me hastily, and with her former affectionate expression in her eyes, "Come to us at 8 o'clock, do you hear?" Without fail, I merely threw my hands apart in amazement, but she was already retreating, having thrown a white scarf over her head.